My boss's daughter fired me as soon as she took over the company. "We don't need old men like you," she said. I just smiled sheepishly and nodded. The next day, her father yelled, "Why the hell did you do that? Don't you read contracts?" But it was already too late when she found out. I was standing in that courtroom, watching the daughter of my boss break down in tears, begging me for mercy after realizing her costly mistake. I had finally won. After 3 decades of humiliation, I finally had a taste of what victory felt like. For you to fully understand this story, I need to take you back to the beginning and tell you how it all started. My name is Elric Dandridge. I am 73 years old, and I live in Cedar Falls, Iowa. For most of my life, I believed that friendship was sacred. I thought a handshake between honest men was stronger than any contract. I learned the hard way how wrong I was. Stay with me on this story, because I need to quickly explain how I ended up getting fired by my boss's daughter, and how I later got my revenge. When the crisis of my hole began, my boss's daughter wasn't even involved. She only came into the picture later. But instead of her firing me being the end for me, it turned out to be the universe answering my prayers. So please be patient and follow along as I unfold the story piece by piece. This story begins back when I was much younger and full of dreams. I had created something special in my garage. Night after night, I worked on a computer software that could help small businesses track their inventory. This was back in the early 90s, when most people barely understood what a computer could do. I knew my software was revolutionary. I had tested it myself, refined every detail, and made it work perfectly. But I was just a dreamer with calloused hands and no business connections. I needed help to turn my creation into a real company. That help came from someone I trusted completely. His name is Tavner Green. Tavner had been my friend since childhood. We grew up on the same street, played baseball together, and shared our biggest secrets. When I showed him my software, his eyes lit up with excitement. Tavner was everything I was not. He was smooth with words, well-dressed, and knew important people in the business world. He was also broke like me, but he knew people who had money to invest and connections that could open doors. When he offered to partner with me, it felt like a blessing from heaven. We shook hands in his kitchen on a warm spring evening. No lawyers, no complicated paperwork, just 2 friends agreeing to build something great together. I trusted him with my life's work because I believed our friendship meant something sacred. Looking back now, I can see how naive I was. I handed over my software prototype and let Tavner handle all the business details. He promised to take care of the legal filings, the investor meetings, and the company registration. He said it would be easier if he managed the paperwork while I focused on improving the technology. Weeks turned into months. Every time I asked for updates, Tavner gave me vague answers about meetings and negotiations. He told me to be patient, that good things take time. I believed him because I wanted to believe him. I spent those months perfecting my software even more, adding new features and fixing small problems. I worked 16-hour days, dreaming about the company we would build together. I imagined the office we would share, the employees we would hire, and the success we would achieve as partners. But something was wrong. Tavner stopped returning my phone calls as quickly as before. When we did meet for coffee, he seemed distracted and uncomfortable. He avoided talking about specific details of our business progress. The truth hit me like a physical blow on June 17, 1991. I remember the date because it changed my entire life. Tavner had asked me to meet him at a small office above Henderson Hardware Store on East Main Street in Ottumwa. I climbed those narrow stairs, expecting to finally see our company taking shape. Instead, I found myself face to face with the most devastating betrayal imaginable. The office was already set up and running. There were computers, filing cabinets, and a sign on the door that made my blood freeze. The sign read Graceful Solutions, LLC. Not our company, his company, built entirely on my stolen software. When I walked into that office and saw my software running on multiple computers, I felt my world collapse. The program I had created in my garage was there, working perfectly, but under someone else's name. Tabner stood behind the desk, unable to meet my eyes directly. I asked him to explain what was happening, and his response shattered what remained of my trust. He told me he had registered the business under his name alone because it was simpler that way. My name appeared nowhere on any legal documents. Everything I had created now belonged to Graceful Solutions, a company I had never heard of before that moment. The worst part was not the theft itself, but how calmly Tabner explained it. He called it an unfortunate business decision and insisted it was nothing personal. He acted as if stealing my life's work was just another day at the office. I threatened to take him to court, but Tabner was prepared for that reaction. He leaned back in his chair and explained the harsh reality I was facing. I had no legal documentation proving the software was mine. No patents, no copyrights, no contracts with my name on them. He told me I would spend every penny I had on legal fees and walk away with nothing to show for it. He was probably right. I was a simple man who had trusted a handshake over proper paperwork. But Tabner was not completely heartless. Perhaps his conscience was bothering him, or maybe he was worried about his reputation in our small community. He offered me a deal that would let him sleep better at night while keeping his stolen empire intact. He wanted to hire me as a contract employee at Graceful Solutions, not as a partner or co-founder, but as regular staff. The offer was insulting, but I had a family to feed and bills to pay. My wife was pregnant with our second child, and I could not afford to be unemployed while fighting a legal battle I would probably lose. After several tense meetings that nearly turned into shouting matches, we both hired lawyers to work out the details. Those negotiations took weeks, and every day felt like torture. I watched my former friend build a business empire on my stolen foundation while I begged for scraps from his table. The contract Tabner offered me was both my salvation and my humiliation. It guaranteed me a permanent position at the company until I died. I would work only 2 days per week, receive a decent salary and benefits, but earn a fraction of what I deserved as the true creator. I was going to sign that contract because I had no choice. My family needed security, and this was the best I could get from an impossible situation. But I made sure to include one special clause to the contract that Tabner knew about. But despite his knowledge of this added clause, he barely paid attention to it during the negotiations, because he believed he could meet up with the demands. Pay close attention as I continue this story, because the details of the added clause in the contract, signed by both Tabner and me, would later become my safe haven from disaster, and the pathway of my revenge for what he did to me. I will reveal the details of this added clause as we proceed. So, for the next 30 years, I worked at the company I should have owned. I watched younger employees get promoted above me while I remained just another worker. Executives who knew nothing about the software's original creation treated me like an old man with big stories and small importance. The humiliation ate at me every single day. I sat in meetings where my own ideas were discussed as if they belonged to someone else. I trained new programmers on software systems I had invented, but they never knew my real contribution to the company. Colleagues sometimes laughed when I mentioned that I was actually the original creator. Some thought I was lying to make myself feel important. Others assumed I was just a bitter old man who could not accept his place in the company hierarchy. One person believed me, though. His name is Reggie Tallow. Reggie was a janitor who worked night shifts at the office. He had once owned his own software business before losing it to a dishonest partner. When I told him my story, he understood exactly what I had been through. Reggie became my closest friend at work. He listened to my frustrations and encouraged me not to give up hope. He reminded me that justice sometimes comes slowly, but it does come eventually. Another person who showed me kindness was Margot Fenthill, a woman in her early 60s who worked in the human resources department. She had watched me navigate the company politics for years and secretly admired how I handled the constant disrespect with dignity. Margot often warned me to stop talking about being the original founder because she feared the company would find excuses to push me out early. She understood office politics better than I did and knew that powerful people do not like being reminded of their wrongdoing. But I could not stay quiet forever. The bitterness was consuming me from the inside, and by age 68, I felt like giving up completely. My body ached from years of construction work before joining the company, and my spirit felt broken from decades of humiliation. One evening, while cleaning out old photo albums, I found a picture of my late wife holding our newborn son. She had sacrificed so much to support our family during those difficult early years after Tavner's betrayal. Looking at her face in that photograph reminded me why I had signed that contract in the first place. I realized that if I died without fighting for what was rightfully mine, I would be forgotten as just another employee who told tall tales about his importance. My children would never know that their father had created something revolutionary that changed the business world. That photograph became my motivation to keep waiting and planning. I told myself that someday, somehow, justice would find its way to me. I just had to be patient and ready when the opportunity finally appeared. The opportunity came when I turned 73 years old. Tavner announced that he was retiring from active management of the company. He was getting older and wanted to spend his remaining years traveling with his wife and enjoying his wealth. His decision to step down meant that someone else would take control of Graceful Solutions. I assumed it would be one of the senior executives who had worked there for many years. Instead, Tavner surprised everyone by naming his eldest daughter as the new chief executive officer. Her name is Velra Green. Velra was 40 years old when she became the new CEO and had been working in various management positions at other companies for most of her career. She had business training from expensive universities and strong opinions about how modern companies should operate. I barely remembered her from when she was a child, but I could see immediately that she was nothing like her father. Where Tavner was smooth and diplomatic, Velra was sharp and aggressive. She believed that being tough was the only way to earn respect in the business world. Her first few weeks as leader were like watching a hurricane tear through the office. She called meetings with every department and made it clear that major changes were coming. She used words like restructuring and efficiency improvement, but everyone understood what was at stake. Velra walked through the hallways with cold authority, studying employees like a general reviewing troops before battle. She asked pointed questions about productivity and questioned whether certain positions were really necessary for company success. Board meetings became tense confrontations where she criticized long-standing policies and demanded explanations for every expense. She made it obvious that she considered many current employees to be dead weight that was holding the company back from greater profits. 2 months after becoming the chief executive officer, Velra scheduled a private meeting with me in her glass-walled office. I never knew what was coming. Her face showed the same cold determination I had seen her use with other employees she considered expendable. She told me she had reviewed my employment files and found my position unnecessary for the company's future success. She said the business no longer needed old men like me collecting paychecks for showing up twice a week. Then she slid a termination notice across her desk and informed me that security would escort me out of the building immediately. She expected me to argue or beg for my job, but instead, I smiled with genuine satisfaction. For 30 years, I had been waiting for something to change, fantasizing about how to get my revenge on her father. Lo and behold, the universe granted my wish. I stood up slowly, picked up the termination document, and thanked her politely for making everything so clear. Now, before we proceed, it's very important to say that if you're enjoying this story, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel. By liking, subscribing, and even leaving a short comment of where you are watching from, you are helping me grow this channel so that other people can find this video and learn the graceful wisdom tips that it offers. I share real stories from people who face tough situations just like this. These stories aren't just for entertainment. They're meant to help us learn and grow wiser. We can sometimes become vulnerable, and that's why it's so important to learn from the experiences and mistakes of others. Together we can protect ourselves and protect each other through shared wisdom. Now back to our story. As I walked out of that office building for what I thought would be the last time, Velra had no idea what she had just triggered. The contract I signed 30 years ago with her father contained an added clause that would soon turn her world upside down. I went home, called my lawyer, and set the wheels of justice in motion. It's time for me to read out exactly what that clause says. The clause was crystal clear in its language. It says that if I was ever terminated without mutual consent from both parties, I would automatically become entitled to 70% ownership of Graceful Solutions. 3 decades ago, Tavner agreed to this added clause in my employment contract with Graceful Solutions that I'm pretty sure Tavner never imagined a day when he wouldn't be CEO anymore. And a new CEO who didn't even know the details of the contract or the added clause would fire me without mutual agreement. My lawyer had kept copies of that original contract in his files all these years. The document was legally binding, witnessed by 2 attorneys, and signed by both Tavner and myself. No amount of corporate restructuring could change what was written in black ink on official letterhead. Within days, I filed a lawsuit against the company. Velra's expensive attorneys fought back with everything they had, claiming the contract was outdated and unenforceable. They argued that business practices had changed since the 1990s and that such agreements were no longer valid. But the judge disagreed with their arguments. During the court proceedings, the original contract was presented as evidence, and its terms were examined in detail. Every signature was verified, every witness statement was confirmed, and every legal requirement was proven to be properly fulfilled. I watched from the plaintiff's table as Velra's confidence slowly crumbled during the trial. Her face grew pale as she realized the magnitude of what she had done. Her voice trembled when she tried to explain her decision to terminate my employment. In a moment of desperation, she stood up in the courtroom and addressed me directly. She begged for forgiveness, claiming she had not known about her father's original betrayal. She promised to undo the termination and rehire me immediately if I would drop the lawsuit. I looked at her calmly and told her this was not about getting my job back. This was about finally being recognized for what I had truly contributed to the company. After 30 years of being invisible, I wanted the world to see who had really created the foundation of Graceful Solutions. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me the 70% ownership stake specified in the contract. When Tavner learned about the verdict, I heard that the shock was too much for his aging body to handle. He suffered a massive stroke and was left paralyzed and unable to speak. Velra blamed herself for her father's medical collapse and quietly resigned from the company she had briefly controlled. In her resignation statement, she admitted that her harsh treatment of employees had come from deep personal insecurity rather than sound business judgment. I walked into Graceful Solutions as its majority owner, but the victory felt hollow in ways I had not expected. While cleaning out Tavner's old office, I discovered his private journal hidden in a desk drawer. The pages revealed a story I had never known. Back when I first shared my software idea with him, Tavner had been drowning in debt and family problems. His father had disowned him for previous business failures. His wife had threatened to leave him if he could not provide better financial security for their growing family. Reading those journal entries, I understood that Tavner had not stolen my idea out of pure greed. He had been desperate to prove he was not a failure, especially to his children who looked up to him. My software had represented his last chance at redemption and respectability. The betrayal was still wrong, but learning about his motivations made me feel something unexpected. Instead of satisfaction, I felt a deep sadness for both of us. We had both been victims of circumstances that forced us into positions we never wanted to occupy. I kept ownership of the company, but the taste of victory had turned bitter. Sometimes revenge brings justice, but it does not always bring peace. I had spent 30 years waiting for this moment, and now that it had arrived, I wondered if the cost had been worth paying. Tavner died 6 months later, never recovering his ability to speak or move. I attended his funeral and saw the pain in his family's eyes. They had lost everything because of choices made decades before some of them were even born. My story teaches us that justice and revenge are not the same thing. I was right to seek what belonged to me, But I learned that winning can sometimes feel like losing when you see the full picture. Here are the lessons I want you to remember. 1. Protect your ideas legally. Always protect your ideas with proper legal documentation. Friendship and handshakes are beautiful, but they cannot stand up in court when things go wrong. 2. Hurt people hurt people. You need to understand that people who hurt us often have their own pain driving their actions. This does not excuse what they do, but it helps us respond with wisdom instead of just anger. 3. Justice has a price. Be careful what you wish for when seeking justice. Sometimes getting what we deserve comes with consequences we never expected. 4. Forgiveness frees you. Forgiveness is not about letting others off the hook. It is about freeing ourselves from the poison of bitterness that can consume our hearts for decades. Comment below and tell me what resonated most with your own experiences. Like and subscribe if you want more stories that teach us how to navigate life's difficult moments with grace. Until next time, keep living with grace and purpose.